Hello, welcome to my channel, Gamma University. It's really a pleasure to be with you today, and I hope you're doing very well. I just want to take the time to really express my gratitude to all those who have taken the time to give me some comments and feedback, via YouTube. It's been really great to see all the comments that so far you have shared with me, and I want to encourage you to keep these comments coming so that together we can grow this channel. Do expect to see more quality videos as we go ahead. I believe in growth. I really want to see how far, one can make a difference. And over the next few months, I'm sure the production of the videos will be much more different. You'll be seeing links to very useful materials just to help those who want to read a bit further, and also generally to enhance your learning and to make it much more user friendly and fun. Now, today, what I want to really focus on is on resilience, as I promised the last time around. Now, I've had other comments to look at leadership, and I'll be looking at that as we go ahead. But I just wanted to give an introduction to resilience because we're currently in a climate where I believe it's much more needed. And together, we can explore some of the lessons. And I'll share a bit of my experience from you to you as well, so that you can, make good use of what I've learned, especially for those who are up and coming in their profession or those who are experiencing some challenges, within the workplace or within life in general. So when we talk about resilience, what exactly do we mean? Well, I checked the dictionary as always, just to find out what the definition of resilience really is all about. And basically, it's about ability to bounce back. Just summarize that. Your ability to bounce back following a traumatic experience, or following a challenging experience, or following some difficulties. Now, if you have a spring in your hand and then you squeeze the spring and you release it, the spring should be able to regain the shape that it had previously after you've sort of deformed it. So when we're looking at resilience, we're looking at your ability to bounce back when you're faced with challenges. Now, these challenges can be in various forms. You can face financial challenges, you can face challenges at work, it could be health related, and it could be job related, unemployment, and all kind of challenges really. You can go through that. But the question is, how quickly can you bounce back? Now, sometimes it might sound so simple, especially when you, the one advising or suggesting ways in which people should bounce back, have not gone through the same experience that others have gone through. And it's really important, I believe, that when one is sharing the experience, clearly, if you've passed through a similar situation what someone is going through, I believe that person can, empathize with you and learn much more from your own personal experience as well, as against just telling you stuff that are theoretical and have no practical purpose. So let's look at resilience then. Resilience can be in various forms. If you're working within an organization, well, you can have the organization's attitude to being able to withstand challenges. Especially now that we have a pandemic, you might look at the organization's ability to deal with the pandemic and ensure that its employees or staff are safe and its business, is running smoothly and it can bounce back. It's got enough cash reserves, that it can sort of bounce back and deal with the economic pressures. I mean, McKinsey has produced a report on that, and at some point, I'll be going through that particular report, on the impact of COVID-19 on businesses in terms of resilience. But today, I want to look at the other aspect of resilience. This is from the personal perspective. And this is where, your own abilities, the resources that you have, can enable you to deal with the stresses, the difficulties, the challenges that one is experiencing, either within the workplace, at home, or in life in general. Now, when we talk about resilience, like I said earlier on, you can either have it in the form of the organization or from the individual perspective. So, in looking at the individual perspective, let's look at what are some of the factors that can actually, require you to develop resilient skills. There has been a recent study, by CV Library, which says that, employers are looking for, which is about 57% of employers are looking for those type of skills, resilient skills for employees. Well, why is that? Is it because the work environment, has changed? Is it because, there are a lot of economic pressures that, we need to be able to bounce back? Or is it because employers want staff who, are much more determined and focused and can get a job done despite all the challenges that they're going through? So a whole lot of factors can explain that. Resilience is very important because not being able to bounce back when you've gone through challenging difficulties can have impact on our well-being, our mental well-being, our immune system, our ability to fight illnesses or diseases. Mortality rate is a big factor as well. The amount of people who commit suicide, increases when you're not able to bounce back. And also, unemployment is a big one. You want a situation whereby people are much more fulfilled going to work doing what they really love to do. And if not able to contribute, you know, to society from that perspective, yes, sometimes can have a big impact and lead to maladaptive behaviors, such as the misuse of drugs, substances, alcohol, smoking excessively. So all these factors, make it much more necessary for us to develop resilient skills and become much more effective at what we're doing. To illustrate this point, I just wanted to share with you a personal experience, that I had way back in my career. I trained as a mental health nurse, and I was working within the crisis team. Now, for those of you who don't know, crisis team actually deals with people who are in a crisis situation, basically have experiencing a breakdown either from the social system, not able to cope, and as a result, may need some intervention. And the intervention sometimes could either be an admission to a hospital or, support at home. But the crisis team I worked was one of the first within the country. There were a lot of them, but it's one of the first within the country. And we have been, working under challenging situations, not having enough staff, caseload has gone up, and all the current pressures that you see, even with COVID-19, which means higher, staff turnover, experiencing burnouts within the workplace, and looking to new ways, of working. It hasn't been that easy. It wasn't that easy at that point. But anyway, what happened then was that, well, I'd done my master's then in crisis intervention, and I've been managing cases, going out there to do loads of assessment, and so far have been quite successful and effective with the team. But on this particular day, we had an experience. I was due to go on leave, and I'd done my visits, and I was just about to go home. This was around handover time, so we're talking about 1:30 to 2. But we did have a patient who was, out there waiting to be assessed. And the patient, I'd seen the patient there for over an hour, and the patient had been brought to our facility from a different hospital. So I kind of felt, wait a minute, this patient has just been waiting, and I felt, it's not that great. So I wanted to start the assessment process. So I contacted my colleagues, and said, look, I'm just starting the assessment process. Can you join me when you arrive? So yes, I started, and I think within 15 minutes, a colleague joined me, and then we did an assessment, just like we always would do. And we came up with a plan of intervention. The plan of intervention was to manage this patient at home. The patient was suicidal, though, and we have managed a lot of situations like that before. Suicidal patient, work the patient at home, bring the patient to the day hospital, and prevent hospital admission. So that's the same thing we felt we were going to do with this particular patient. Now, I was about to leave, because, I was going to leave and it was my last day. So we did assessment, handed over to the team, put in place a plan, and the team had to follow up the patient within some few hours of, our assessment, just to make sure that they were all right at home. So I got home, and then for some reason, I just felt intuitively that something had gone wrong. So I decided to call my colleague. So I called this chap and he told me, Charles, why did you call? I said, look, I just don't feel right. I just feel something has gone wrong. And he said, yes, you're right. Unfortunately, this patient was sent home. You know, I didn't send the patient home. I mean, I handed over, but they sent the patient home based on the plan that we had in place. And then they followed up within some few hours, put it that way. So I'll say between 3:30 and 5:30, they followed up to check on the situation at home. And the patient unfortunately stabbed himself multiple times and then ended up passing away in the early hours, the following day. And I felt really distraught, so devastated. I was on leave. I was just worried, thinking, what is people saying about me? It felt that the responsibility was on me, but I thought I wasn't the only one who did it. But I think because I started the whole assessment process, I felt fully responsible. Three of us were involved in the assessment process, two clinicians and then a doctor in the end. But I just felt so bad. Then a colleague rang me, said, Charles, don't worry. I checked the records and you've done everything. So, wait a minute, what's happening here? You know, of course, those days I used to ensure that following every assessment, my documentation ought to be accurate. And this colleague of mine assured me that yes, I've, done everything I had to do, the risk assessment, everything, the plan, everything was in place. But at that point, I felt I was coming up. I was sort of developing my skills much more further, wanting to be much more autonomous. And here I was with this situation where I've gone to do this assessment, and unfortunately, together with colleagues, this person has, you know, ended up harming himself and then died in the end. So all kind of thoughts just went through my mind. Is that the end of me? Am I going to be able to deal with the situation? Am I going to be able to bounce back? You know, the good and bad thing was that I was on leave. So when I was on leave, I think for about 2 weeks. But then in my mind, it was like, what are people thinking? And I'm sure if you've been through that situation, that's what you're going to think about. What is people's perception about you? And who do you think you are? And all those thoughts were just, flowing through my mind. So I just, took it as it was, at that point, and tried to reassure myself that I did what I had to do. Um, Fortunately, I had a very good supportive manager at that time. It was investigated, and one of the key learning from that was that it was really important for us to have tried to contact a relative, of that person. But that person, what I remember, didn't have any relative around. Basically was just alone in this country, so it was going to be very difficult. But maybe a friend of his would have helped. Um, well, to cut a long story short, I had to write a coroner's report, and well, um, we learned from that experience. We had a debrief exercise, and had to, put myself together, and as a team, had that. It was very important as a team, work collectively together, and I did receive the support that was needed at that point. So it took me a while to gain my confidence back, because I felt, wait a minute. So does it mean that I'm not that skilled or what? And at that time, I didn't know much about human factors, which is something I've learned over the years at the moment. Um, so I really didn't understand how this situation sort of emerged. But then from later experience and reflecting on that, learned more about systems and how, you know, alignment of systems, can lead to problems, especially if they are latent, if you cannot see them. And so my understanding eventually emerged. But as time went on, eventually I became much more confident and much more able to sort of do my work well and then be able to bounce back. So bouncing back was kind of a muscle developing skill, and I'll say a lot of combinations helped me out during that particular process. And I think having a good support network, really helped. Someone to be able to talk to, and colleagues at work who respected and understood what you were going through, and they're empathizing and saying that well, it could have been them, and basically understanding that we work with a high, risk level. And because when you're dealing with people who can easily commit suicide, it can have a huge impact on you, especially if you unfortunately to work in a climate where there's a lot of blame when something terrible happens. So by connecting with those that I knew, my family especially, and talking to them, it kind of helped, as time went on. Because, I didn't want my confidence to sort of be hit and evaporate. So those days, I started jogging as well, going out for a walk, possibly just telling myself good things. And some situation, prayer also was very helpful. Praying to ask for strength. Others will do meditation. I wasn't necessarily good at meditation at that point, but praying kind of helped, to restore the confidence and then having a positive image, about myself and my skills and ability, and but then it was just with time. It just didn't happen overnight. I can assure you. There were times that I was a bit worried about going to do certain assessments because it did hit my confidence. But a while after a while, I realized I couldn't really hold myself back, especially when we went through the coroner and the reports came not too harsh, I will say, against me and my colleagues. It felt like we did what we could at that time to help this young man, but unfortunately, we were not successful on that day. So, the key lesson here was that resilience really helps, to improve yourself and develop the muscles that you need in order to be better, at your job and also in your family life. Because depending on where you come from, you have gone through a lot of challenges. And it's possible that, you'll have some family challenges and you had obstacles that were in your way and you had to fight hard and then bounce back and then, see yourself through. But then I read an article recently from Professor Michael Trainer of Middlesex University, and Professor Michael Trainer actually taught me a session on crisis intervention. But his article actually focused on critical resilience. And what he basically, his argument was this. He focused his arguments mainly within the healthcare sector, all right? But I think there are lessons here that we can actually take to other industries. But his argument was just that in most cases, there has been a lot of training out there where, like mindfulness, meditation, other resilient training out there by employers to try and help their staff to become much more resilient. But his argument is that in most cases, we need to look at the policies and the structures that are in place. Because if the policies and structures that we are in place are false, then it means that employers are actually just setting up their employees for failure because there's failure within the system and that's not being taken care of. So if you have policies that do not encourage a learning atmosphere, you have policies that are much more rigid, not flexible, to enable staff to learn and to support your staff. But all you're saying is that you're taking resources from them, you're looking at dismantling certain structures and then telling staff you got to be resilient. Then his argument clearly is that that's not right. We're just making staff necessary to, I mean, just staff to be overwork in essence. And that is an area that I felt I'll bring to your attention, that when you're looking at resilience, what is the real cause of the stressor? Is it an obstacle that has been put in place at work? Is it something that is structural at work or within the family sector? Is it something that's within your control? Because if it's within your control, you can actually do something about it. But if it's not, then that is going to be a challenge, and you have to find better ways of dealing with that situation. So if it's structural, what do you do with that? Do managers have a role to play in dealing with, in helping their staff to become much more resilient? These are questions I feel we need to really explore. Where is the causal factor coming from? And if it's from a source that you can control, then of course you can do something about it. So I think I'd just like to leave this here and we'll want to explore it further. But Michael Trainer talks about critical realism, and he's talking about looking at organizational structures, processes, and how they impact staff. Because from that perspective, it might be that you may not need resilience training. It might be that the organization actually has to put in place the necessary support system that can help staff to bounce back. But clearly, in relation to the work that you do, yes, I believe some form of resilience is needed, especially when it relates to the work that you do, like the experience that I shared with you. Because sometimes in caring for patients, the unfortunate thing may happen. Patients may die. Right during this COVID crisis period, most staff would have encountered patients who have died. You may have a colleague or loved one, a family friend or member who's also passed away. And the question is, how do you deal with it? How do you bounce back? Right? How do you deal with that situation? It's not that easy until you've gone through yourself. Sometimes you just be saying stuff that may not be very helpful. But when you've been through the whole situation yourself, I think you're much more in a better position to help others in most instances, though. So I want to leave this short video with you. And my message today is that resilience is a muscle, it's a skill that we can develop. And we can do that by staying in contact with others. We can do that by doing simple things, taking good care of ourselves, making sure that making sure and acknowledging that it's not everything that is within our control. Things that are within our control, we can basically handle that. And if we are able to take care of ourselves, deal with some of our own challenges, look at our inner resources, we can bounce back, face the challenges that we're going through. It's not going to be easy. Time is always a healer. As long as you stay focused and you have the support that you need, then there's assurance ahead of you. So until I meet you the next time, why not stay resilient during this difficult period that we're experiencing together? Because clearly there's light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, have a wonderful day and hope to catch up with you another time. Stay blessed.